Well guys, I love me an Italian stiletto. How about you? It's going to be a cold steel Ti-Lite review, but first I have some fractal ranting to go on. So maybe somebody will be nice to come along and tell you when the review starts, but all my videos start when I start talking. First we're going to talk about the history behind the Italian stiletto. Now, the Italian stiletto was, at first, an Italian weapon, used in war, used in assassinations, things like that. I know I'm butchering the history, but I'm trying to go fast. Primarily a piercing weapon, at first not even with a sharpened edge, sometimes triangular in cross-section, sometimes spherical, always with a main integral guard though, always fixed blade. Now as time went on, the knife evolved, like all knives do, all designs do, and they evolved it into, one variation was the switchblade Italian stiletto, as represented here by my AKC leverletto. A lot of them were button locks. Very popular in American 50s culture, brought to America by Italian immigrants in 1940s, 1950s. And while the popular culture might have painted these as fighting knives, and as we know, any knife can be very lethal, especially with a long piercing blade like the Italian stilettos had, I'm going to have to disagree. I don't think it's a great fighting knife. I think it's got problems in the world of traction and not having as long of a blade as it used to. And I think those problems come together and make it just a not great fighting knife design, and give it problems when it's tried to be adapted like the cold steel Ti-Lite into a fighting knife. I think there are better options for your money. So that's my feelings about its inspiration. I know that being a stiletto, people will think of it as a fighting knife, but I'll try to present some reasons why I don't think that's really the right assumption to have. And as you can see here in my other Italian stiletto-inspired knives, I do have a pretty costly collection of Italian stilettos. I do love the designs. I just don't really think of them as a fighting knife. I just think they're cool. So moving on then, I do have the cold steel 4-inch Ti-Lite. As you guys may have noticed from my other knife reviews, other collection updates, stuff like that, I never buy the small versions of anything. I have the small version of the cold steel Ti-Lite, the 4 as opposed to the 6. You guys, the 6 just is ridiculous. It's too long. It doesn't feel nearly as sturdy as the 4-inch. It's inconvenient to have in your pocket. Yeah, it's a no-go, in all honesty. I like the 4 a lot better. So yeah, there is that. And with the ranting over, we can get moving on to the review of the knife. Starting with the tip, it is a pretty sharp tip. Yeah, that is pretty well done tip, very sharp. As to be expected, cold steel is very good at getting their knives sharp. Belly, little to none on the Italian stiletto design. That's to be expected. Let's see if I can prop this thing up real quick. There we go. The blade profile, as we've talked about a little bit so far, stiletto, bead blast, cold steel. We want stonewash. We want stonewash and coated blades with better coatings. Please fix it for us. The grind, we got a pretty typical bayonet grind. Like I said, made popular in the American 50s and 60s popular culture. Knives like these, button lock automatic stilettos. I'm not convinced we couldn't have had full flat, even if it has to be like the AKC leverlettos. You guys saw it's got a little bayonet grind on top just for cuteness points, but it does have the full flat. The steel is AUS 8A. Like I said, it's a little bit too rust non-resistant. It's a little too prone to rust with the cold steel bead blast. We want coatings that are good or stonewash. But guys, the retention on this knife was damn good. I tested it out the other day. I may have judged the cold steel AK a little too harshly because testing this thing out, it's the same steel and it held an edge damn well. The sharpening, well, from looking at the point, I can tell you the knife has got an asymmetric grind, but for now the sharpening was fine. I've only really sharpened it once and I didn't remove much material though, so you may run into the asymmetric sharpening problems later on, but for me it was good and it held an edge for a damn long time. The deployment, well, you're going to be able to use these quillions as a wave coming out of your pocket. This will snag on the lip of your pocket and open the knife for you. You can use this thumb stud here. It's a pretty nice thumb stud. You have got a quillion type flipper, sort of, here on the back. The quillion and a rotation, you can get it open. Can't do it from behind the camera, sorry. It is possible. Maybe a rotational opening if you set it a little bit looser than it came from the factory and if you whip it pretty hard. Guys, this is not a smooth opening knife. I thought we perfected this. This knife is crying out for some phosphor bronze washers and it doesn't have them. Could really use them. It's not very smooth at all. Lock, got your locking liner there. It's strong and all. I would have liked to have seen the triad lock worked in, and I know we would have had to do something different with the Quillions, but I think it would have been cool to have a triad lock. Play, oh, we got a little bit side to side and front to back. Really not very much, nothing to worry about. A little more than I'd like. But the handle, well, there you go. It's coated aluminum. Again, cold steel. You need a new coating guy. I don't know who the coating guy is, but he needs to be fired. That's some wear and tear just from beating around on my multi-tool and keys and stuff. Coating doesn't feel very good in hand, and the handle doesn't feel very good in hand. And yeah, no. As far as ergos go, well, they're not terrible. There's just not a lot here. I mean, these holes do nothing, and I think they look stupid. I'm going to be honest. I would have much preferred just even a black smooth G10, but really a black low texture G10 would have been a good addition to this knife, as well as a stonewash blade. I think it would have looked a lot better. The jimping, well, we got jimping on the Quillions to use them as thumb studs and as the wave, but well, the Quillion on the back is faced the wrong way to be used as a thumb ramp or a jimping section, so no, and that actually presents a sharp edge that you could hurt your hand on if you were to try to make this knife flex into the tactical PDU with no gloves on. I think that would hurt, and it could even contribute to your grip loosening and your hand slipping down onto the knife edge. Lanyard hole, nope, I wouldn't really think about a lanyard on this knife. Maybe because we got the shallow clip section, we could use the lanyard. The presentation, guys, honestly was pretty bad. Got a visible detent hole. As you're opening the knife, you can see the detent hole. It's definitely not a performance problem, but it always it bugged me, you know. The bead blast plus the handle coating, it just doesn't look like a badass fighting knife. It's kind of pastel colory. The unsmooth opening, not impressed. And it did come sharp though, came very sharp. That's not a problem with cold steel. The screws, they're fine, torque screws as usual. Clip, well, it's a shallow one position clip with no texture above the clip to get the knife out of your pocket. And cold steel, I thought you were better than that. We should at least have reversible tip up carry for the knife if we're not going to have tip up, tip down. Should at least get right and left hand on a design like this. There's no reason not to. As I've said, defensive usage, well, no. I think if you were to try to use this as a defensive knife, could you hurt somebody? Could you defend yourself? Sure, but it's got a higher probability than a lot of other knives built this way to hurt your hand. I mean, I think you're crazy if you're using this as anything other than a thrusting weapon. That's what it's designed for. If you thrust, I think you've got a high chance of your fingers rolling over the Quillions and getting onto the blade, especially with this other Quillion here to present a sharp edge and have you hurt your hand. Quillions on the knives that inspired them were smooth for a reason. And, you know, they were copying the guard, which would have actually served on the real Italian stiletto, the big one, as a guard for your hand to keep your hand from slipping onto the blade. But we got none of that here, and the lack of a traction plan with the handle and, you know, with no thumb ramp, anything like that, I think it kind of disqualifies it from defensive use. And I know a lot of people won't agree with that, but I think it just makes sense. EDC, sort of. Again, it's not really optimized for EDC either. Not a lot of belly slicing capability, anything like that, and I think the tip's a little bit too cute. As a collection knife, though, I think you could make the argument for it. As sort of an overview, well, let me just put it this way. I looked on Blade HQ for the same amount of money as this, and less amount of money, actually. Better defensive knife would be the Cold Steel Spartan. It's got a much better traction plan, and that knife can be used for slashing as well as piercing. Better EDC knife would be the Waved Endura, and a better legal Italian stiletto, well, there really isn't one. If you're into Italian stilettos, you don't want to fork up a little bit more money for a Spyderco Velotte and something like that, and if you don't want to have an illegal knife with the AKCs or the Frank Beltrames, then this knife might be for you. So pass-fail, basically the same thing. If you're an Italian stiletto fan, yes. Otherwise, guys, I'm going to say maybe you should spend your money someplace else. I mean, I like this knife, so it hurts me to give it a negative review. As I've said, I love my Italian stilettos, but I've got to be honest, and if you guys don't share that love with me, then I don't think you're going to dig this knife. My little stats specs corner, got a 4-inch blade, 4 3/4 handle length, overall 8 3/4 inches, blade thickness 1/8 inch, weight 4.6 ounces, cost on Blade HQ $80, cost on eBay, buy it now $67. Hope you guys have enjoyed this review. Yeah, sorry for a sort of negative review, just gotta be honest with you guys. That's that. Stay tuned for more of the same.